So we're just going to jump into some questions. And guys, these are some of the, like I said, some friends of mine. We've been connected for some time. Some of them meeting for the first time face to face. These are some of the best practitioners I know. You know, eChurch, PushPay, we wanted to make sure that we brought the best of the best. And when it comes to communications in the church space, these guys to me are the best. And so thank you guys so much for coming out. So what type of content, I want to ask, I'll go ladies first. So what type of content performs the best? So people asking, is it video, is it text? For Saddleback, what has worked for you guys when it comes to what type of content?
I love social media because it's so adaptable. I mean, you have to be adaptable because it's changing literally every day. Something new is happening. And so whereas a few years ago, the images with the quotes have been doing really well, this week it's video. And so even video with text on the video that says what the video is saying is performing even better than just video itself. And so for us now, TOV, text on video, is performing the best for us.
So can you talk a little bit about the text on video? It's a new feature that recently came out. Facebook will automatically do this for you, right? Sean Cannel?
On some things they do, but I would check it because it's not always the most accurate.
Correct.
But we put it on video ourselves.
Oh, you guys write it all out.
Mm-hmm.
So Facebook recently, if you want to kind of add to this, Sean.
Well, and you might know more about that, but this is probably a really important stat to grab. The stat for people watching Facebook videos, which is a lot of people, is 85% of people are watching without sound. So that's really good to capture, and so kind of what we're talking about here is maybe text on video a little bit different, but you can caption your videos. You can upload an SRT file, and if you are curious about how to do that, you can just Google it. But it's so critical, right, to be captioning your videos. It can be somewhat challenging to do if it's a lot of text, if it's your pastor preaching for 5 minutes or something. But it's so important, and you know this because consider your own behavior. You're you're at work, you're in a meeting, you're not listening to your executive pastor, you're just watching videos, right? And so, but you don't turn the sound on because you don't want to get caught. And so we just think about people's behavior, and so it's so powerful that you can get a lot of reach by doing those captions. But maybe you could take it deeper with text on video.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. This question's for Nils. How often should people be posting? I know you consult with a lot of churches. How often and how frequent should they be posting?
Yeah, so to add on what you were saying earlier, we always say a minimum of once a day. You need to make sure you're posting every single day. Schedule that out. We see the best balance being about 3 to 5 posts per day. The reality is it's how much you can post quality content. So you shouldn't just post just because you're going to post every 3 hours. But you're really playing an algorithm game with Facebook. And so we find that when you post another post, it kind of kills the last post for what's going to be shown in the algorithm. So when you spread out your post 3 to 5 hours, it gives it a good bandwidth, And so for premium engagement, so about 3 to 5 times a day is what we recommend.
Per like Twitter, are you going more, or are you doing less on Facebook?
Yes, Twitter's always changing. So before we'd say you could post unlimited on Twitter. With them moving to more of an algorithm, we're kind of saying the same thing. About 3 to 5 times a day is kind of an optimal, but it's really all about quality. You've got to make sure it's quality. If you only have one good post a day, just post once. But I think if you can target 3 to 5, I'm curious what others think, but that's what we're recommending to our clients, 3 to 5 times a day.
I think one, as far as looking at the 3 to 5 times a day, I definitely agree with you on that one, Nils. One of the key things that we see that Alejandro was kind of talking about before was talking about the strategy. When you look at how often you post, let's say you just started, we don't have the bandwidth to post a couple times a day. Look at the analytics. Let the analytics tell the story. I'm not sure how many of you all have been in the meetings and when you actually are not watching videos and do pay attention, but there are so many opinions as far as what can do well. Somebody's a social media expert who, just picked up a mobile phone and doesn't understand it. When you start getting down to the analytics, letting the analytics tell the story, when you post a couple times a day and then look at the Facebook insights or look at the Twitter analytics or look at the analytics from Instagram, you start to see how engaged your audience is. That'll start to guide what you're doing from here on out. And especially, and for me, having been in meetings, a lot of meetings at churches, you have to have those analytics and numbers to back up what you're saying because, this is a church conference, so I won't say exactly, but we know how effective opinions are. Mm-hmm. Everybody has one, and, et cetera. This is church. So. But let the analytics and the numbers actually guide what you're doing and tell the story, because they actually back up and show what people are actually doing when they're engaging, how often, and how effective you can be in reaching them.
That's awesome. So Haley manages over 17 campuses, which is amazing. A team of 1.5 for Saddleback Church, which is amazing. And so what are you guys doing as far as frequency for posts? How often?
Well, we really want to anchor everything around our social strategy and then make sure that posts can be flexible to that. So whereas in the past it was like unlimited tweets, we have scaled back to about 4 good pieces of content of tweets a day on Twitter. And then on Facebook, we want to always have part of our strategy a connect piece, a teach piece, and a share piece. And social channels, a lot of senior pastors think that social media is just a marketing channel, but I want to push back and say, no, this is church 24/7 throughout the week. This is someone being the voice of your church all the time, not just on Sunday, but every day throughout the week. So you really need to be mindful about who you have doing that voice. And one of my pet peeves is hearing, give the social to the intern. Like, it's not of value. And you guys, interns leave. So I don't think that's the best strategy. Find someone who is passionate about your church, who can effectively communicate the voice of your church every single day. They put a lot more weight in that voice than you do in the bulletin, because the bulletin only comes out once a week. So think about that.
Ooh, preach. I want to ask you the connect, teach, and share. Can you talk about that framework, your guys' social strategy a little bit?
Yeah, the social strategy is nothing that I really created. It's just in seminary reading the New Testament so many times and finding the ministry of Jesus. And as a person, he connected with people because he cared about people first. So it's all about engagement. Connect is the first part of our strategy. And then we have teach, and that's just educating members with our great teaching content that you pastors out there are spending 10 plus hours a week creating. And then the last part is share, and that's exposing people to ministry opportunity. And so that's kind of, we have so many ministry events, and we could be only posting about those, but that's not going to connect with anybody, and that's going to become white noise. And so you really need to connect with a person individually, keep them with your content, and then share them with ministry opportunity where they can go and grow in their steps with the Lord or be introduced to something that they might come to know the Lord.
That's awesome. Now, Sean, I know you work you've done some consulting with churches still, but you work with a lot of personal brands. So a lot of pastors are authors, and they want to write a book. They want to grow their personal brand. What does that look like when you're consulting with them with their frequency, and how often should a pastor be posting?
I think the numbers are pretty much the same, and then I think the challenge is, sustaining that content, but maybe finding someone or doing it yourself. I would just echo literally what everybody said. Probably about 4 times a day on Facebook, same on Twitter, daily on Instagram if possible. And so just having a content strategy behind that as you are putting out the content that you want to communicate as, say, a lead pastor, author with a personal brand.
That's awesome.
I want to add to that. Yeah. If you're not saying something about your church from your channels, somebody else is. And so whose voice is going to be louder? Think about that.
That's good. So one of the biggest questions I get from a lot of people is, how do I grow my audience? Like, we're just posting and we're not growing. How do you grow your audience, Jason?
Well, starting off, you see the thing that everybody was first initially was talking about up here, which is consistency. So when we look at it from the traditional aspect of, let's say, the traditional church, and you got your men's ministry, your women's ministry, et cetera, you wouldn't start that ministry and have a meeting on Monday and then say, all right, we won't meet again till whenever. We'll just let you know. And that's kind of how we've seen churches look at social media. They'll post on Facebook, they'll give it to the intern will actually hijack the Facebook page and leave, and now you have it locked up where, and this really happens. Like, churches like, yes. I can't get my Facebook page back. I've gotten calls about that. Can you help me get my Facebook page back? Exactly. So they start new ones, and they have 6 Facebook pages out there. But the point is to be consistent. Just like you would be if you have your men's ministry or your women's ministry, you're consistent. You meet every week. You have the strategies and the goals. So be consistent as far as that. And additionally, it's about engagement. So when you're looking at growing, we're looking at the type of content that we're putting out. Again, Alejandro gave us all types of information about different type of content. But now, with people's attention span being so short, we have to figure out, how can you visually tell your story on the platforms that they want to connect with you with. So when we're looking at how you grow on Facebook, how can you visually tell your story with the contents that's are most effective? Video, photos, and going live, obviously, as well. but continually to engage with the audience. And here's another thing, keeping the social and social media. Here's the thing, we're talking about ministry. And if you put out something, a video or something, and somebody comments on it, it would be very nice if the church or whoever's running social media actually talks back to them. So, I mean, because you got to look at, and I always give examples, because when I find myself in these meetings, I always have to give examples of traditional church compared to digital church, when we're looking at this digital mission field. But you would never have somebody come in the service and they ask a question to an usher, and the usher just does not say anything to them. And I'm trying to give the best church experiences. Some of y'all have had some experiences, so et cetera. But but when somebody posts something on the Facebook page or Instagram page, and then somebody asks a question or says something on it, then nobody comments. It's like the page went mute. But this is a ministry tool. This is a ministry platform. For some people, your Instagram page is the only ministry that they'll get. So they may not step foot inside your church. So when we look at, and I'm not even going to go into whole places of people who can't go to church, like the luxuries that we have. And so they're connecting with you online on your international digital church and so on and so forth. But again, when you're looking at growing your social media platforms, the two things I want you to take away from this is consistency and communication. So be effective.
That's awesome. Any other thoughts on how to grow an audience online?
I mean, you said it best when you said, social media is social. And I think that's probably one of the biggest missed opportunities is I think what we sometimes wish we had was this autopilot thing where, social media, right? If I post something, it'll just go viral, it'll take on a life of its own, and my church will grow. But at the end of the day, it takes work and it takes time. And so really and you said it so well, but really diving down to think, and my personal passion is to try to literally connect with every single interaction. I try to do this personally. I don't want a tweet to go unliked. I don't want a Facebook comment to go unliked or replied to. I don't want a message on Facebook to not be replied to. I don't want an email to not be replied to. I know your stress level is getting up there. You're thinking, you're like, this is too much. And I don't want an Instagram direct message to not be replied to. There's all of this communication is very fragmented. But that personal connection and that personal touch point is actually one of the most powerful things on social media. When everyone's trying to push their content, that you create that connection. So I don't think there's even any really great clean answers to that, because then you get into things in youth ministry and age dynamics that actually brings challenges to, replying back and who's doing what. And so, but we just have to face those challenges head on. This is the world we're living in, and there's all kinds of inbound, whether in your Facebook inbox or email inbox. But if we can find ways to be really creating meaningful connections, that's what I think builds the strongest churches on social media.
That's good.
I think about it this way too. Your church grows one person at a time. And so if you can take time to reach that one person who commented you never know. Jessica and I, she works on my team. She's my 0.5 person. She handles a lot of our community management. And so even just last night in our hotel room, she's like, hey, this person just said they can't wait to come to Saddleback. So she responded, can't wait to welcome you. Which campus are you going to attend? And he goes, I think the Newport Mesa one. And so then she CC'd the campus pastor, who luckily was on Twitter and is not a private account. And he responded back and was like, can't wait to welcome you on Sunday. And so it was excellent first-class interaction all the way through the funnel. And so we know that at Saddleback, our communication channels, social media in particular, is going to reach the community and the crowd, and that's all. And then we toss them into the church, and it's the other ministries' jobs to funnel them through, down all the way to the core and commissioned. And commissioned, we send them out, and then we start it all over again. That's awesome. So I think you need to focus your communication strategy. If your social media channel is just for your church people, put very Bible versey things on there, very churchy language. That'll be great. It won't really necessarily effectively grow your church beyond that. And so think about who you're trying to reach and how you're trying to reach them, and that is what we use as a main tool for growth.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think posting content that's worth sharing. And so being very intentional, is somebody going to hit the share button? Are they going to hit the retweet button? If you're intentional in the content you're creating, is it something you would retweet? Do you want to share it with your friends and family? The other side I would say is you got to spend money now. You know, there's a side of hustle and creativity, but it's a pay-to-play system now, as you shared earlier. And what we're finding for our clients, there's 2 ad opportunities for churches that I think are just huge opportunities. Page-like ads on Facebook. There's several ad opportunities. Page-like ads on Facebook from an awareness standpoint, getting people connected. You can so specifically target people with page-like campaigns, and we're seeing them for like 5-6 cents per cost per page-like. In a very geo-targeted way. When you compare that to Yellow Pages historically, it's unbelievable. And then YouTube ads. We're finding you can geo-target YouTube ads so effectively from an awareness standpoint and growing that audience really significantly. Small investment, huge return.
That's awesome.
Wait, I forgot to mention the most important thing.
Jesus.
Obviously, Jesus. Jesus, always. I totally forgot. Advocacy. That is what we use to help grow our channels. It's all
good.
about creating advocates. And so if our content isn't shareable, creating advocates for Saddleback, then it's not an effective strategy. Because look at all of us sitting here. Jason, you have a completely different audience than I do. And so if you share something we create, it's reaching all of your fans versus mine. And so exponentially, that's just the best method. We can't keep thinking that people are magically going to come like our church page or just walk onto our church campus. We have to go out to them, and that best method is peer-to-peer evangelism, and that's through social advocacy. And so I thought this was a crazy stat. 81% of all consumer decisions for purchases are made from friends' posts on Facebook.
Wow.
Well, on social media, I should say, on social posts. And so if you're posting something and your friend sees that, they're 81% more likely to purchase it because they saw it through a friend, not necessarily through the brand page itself. So think about that. It's all about advocacy.
That's great. So another question was, can social media, this is for Sean, really bring my people to my church? I want to talk about those touch cards that you had, the checkpoints, and that was pretty fantastic. Story, if you could share that.
Remind me about those exact.
So the touch cards in when you're campus pastor in the church OC, and I gave my life to the Lord. Where did you come from? Social media.
Okay, yeah. So one of the coolest testimonies, this was actually an Easter a while ago. So we have switched around programs, but at the time they were the paper programs, and they have the box that I'm sure many of you would have, whether physical or digital. How'd you hear about the church? And there's about 7 or 8 options. Newspaper, a friend invited me. Google was an option, but separate on our program, we listed social media separately. And so what was so fascinating, and when a light bulb moment really went on for me, was to see that someone checked the box of, I heard about this on Facebook, Twitter, or social media, but then we had another box on that same program that said, did you give your life to Jesus today, either a recommitment or for the first time? And I saw that that box was checked, I gave my life to Christ for the first time today at church. And it was like this God moment where I was like, okay, someone literally discovered our church just because of social media, showed up to a service, and then ultimately met Christ for the first time. This is very powerful. So I think the answer is absolutely yes. Social media can grow the local church and help us reach people for Christ.
That's great. Do you have any thoughts about, I know you're about to say something, Haley.
About growing your church?
No. Haley was about to jump in.
I just love stories about this because we have so many.
That's
but
awesome.
One of them was our campuses want to do, they want to host experiences that will bring new families in. And so one of our new campuses in Aliso Viejo, they hosted a Frozen sing-along with Elsa and Anna, was making a special appearance right before Christmas time to invite families to Christmas at Saddleback. And the campus pastor came and he's like, I want to just try Facebook ads. So I was like, great, let's do it. So we just he had this big old budget. I'm like, just give me $100 and we'll see what we can do. And they had 40 new families come to the campus. They are a tiny campus for us. Yeah. And they had 40 new families show up in Aliso Viejo, where nothing is happening in that city, and came and stuck. And he came back, and Jessica saw, he was like jumping up and down, and he was so excited. And that was the only external advertising they did other than his stage announcements.
Wow.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
Because, and so I don't know if this is what you did, but I think this is super practical. Did you maybe kind of target fans of Frozen with the invite to an event like that?
That's good.
No, just like soccer moms.
Soccer moms, okay. Yeah. Because, and it worked. I think one of the creative things to think about in the room is beyond just having your idea and having your sermon series and then trying to market it, to go all the way back before you start anything and to try to get in the room with your pastor and to think holistically in light of technology and these tools. And so we would think about living in Las Vegas, UFC fans, having UFC fans that fighters that attend our church and doing like fight nights that could be men's related and then targeting fans of UFC.
Smart.
And you could take this into any area. It could be monster trucks, motocross, Elsa sing-alongs, and Frozen. And then thinking about, okay, what creatively could we tie into in culture, connect that with Facebook ads and advertising to put on an event creatively that then ties people into the local church.
No, that's fantastic. So we're going to jump into some of your guys' questions. Make sure to use the app to submit these questions. We'll jump into that. But my last questions for each of you, like 10 years ago, there would like a conference like this, they wouldn't have had a panel. That's insane. They would have never had a panel 5 to 10 years ago at a church conference talking about social media. So this is super special, guys. So what does social media look like for churches in the next five years, in your opinion?
I don't think you can even see 5 years out. I think you can see maybe a year to 2 years out. But I think it's going to get more personal, more engaging. There's just some functions. I think Facebook Live, we're pushing all of our clients to Facebook Live. I think that live engagement is a huge opportunity. Snapchat is going to change the game of how people are using their mobile device and connecting. But it's so hard to tell where this is all going. But it's going to be more personal, more real, more connected than ever.
Good.
Let me give you 2 examples. So since I'm a tech guy, but actually, I speak geek, I speak normal. So I'm gonna give you guys some examples of what it's going to look like, what you can expect. Probably, we said 5 years out, which is probably it's a stretch, but we'll see. Okay, so let's look at 2 things. I'll give you 2 examples. First one is you guys seen the Snapchat comes out with the glasses, right? All right, Google Glasses tried that. Now imagine all the content that we give to social media. Okay, so imagine you'll be able to walk outside with these glasses on, look at your neighbor, and see their social media posts and see what's going on with them. You'll be able to look at them. You've seen it in the movies. If you've seen the movies, it's already on its way and happening. But that'll be the way we look and see what's going on with people, and that'll give you opportunities to minister because they already have said what's going on with them in their Facebook posts.
Wow.
So when you're looking at your neighbor, now we look at our neighbors and we see, I don't know what you guys see, but my neighbor's kind of crazy. But you see crazy stuff. But now imagine if all their social media, public social media stuff was available to me through my we'll say Snapchat glasses or something like that. That's what's coming in the future. We share so much information, we'll be able to access it even easier.
Wow.
Take away the glasses, it'll be contacts. This is real. This stuff is happening. It's already in motion. Secondly, another thing about social media, because we're talking about sharing everything, and I'm talking about the Internet of Things. So we look at, the appliances and stuff. You look in the mirrors, and we'll be able to see, while we're getting dressed, videos of sermons and short clips and stuff like that. Will be more interactive and more integrated to our lifestyle. But here's the thing, self-driving cars. When we get in the cars, we don't have to worry about driving anymore. We think about listening to audiobooks in cars or listening to the sermons or listening to podcasts from the churches. But you got to think about how you distribute content where people will get in cars, and when they look around, all the windows will be screens. You don't need to look anymore. The cars drive themselves. So now I'll be able to watch a message while the car drives me to where I need to be. So when we're thinking about how we share stuff social, how we'll be interacting in social media and stuff like that, it'll be integrated more so into every aspect of our lives as they become more automated. We'll think life will be getting easier because the cars will drive themselves or the glasses will be able to see everything. But that's more information, more data we'll find ways to connect with each other because we're sharing everything. So when we think about this Great Commission and taking the message to the people and going out and all around the world and stuff like that, the digital platforms and digital mission fields that we have are giving us those opportunities, and it's only going to get easier.
That's awesome. How about you, Haley?
You almost literally took everything I was going to say. Almost. But I think an emphasis on virtual reality is going to be huge. Like you were talking about, all you Snapchat haters better start liking it because Snap Spectacles. I know Insta's going to just copy it in a few minutes. But anyway, Snap Spectacles is what he's talking about, and they have lenses right here. And so this is going to be the first time you can give someone a very, very, very first-person experience of what walking into your church feels like. And so they don't even have to come if they're scared. This can break down that barrier. You can show them what it looks like to literally walk in, shake a greeter's hand, all the way down to the seat and watch the sermon from just some seat in the back, maybe. And so then there's that, and then kind of like what you said, watching the messages live. I think finding those tweetable quotes, coming up with those immediately, posting those, and then giving them a link to share it right on the spot as they're watching it, that's going to be another huge thing.
Wow.
And so I can't fit a lot in these pockets, but I fit my little Alice in Wonderland doll that I keep on my desk. After I attended a conference that the director of Walt Disney Parks did in Florida, he said always to remain curious. And I think the most curious Disney character was Alice, and I love her for that. Her whole journey was because she was curious. And so as a social media practitioner, you always have to remain curious. You always have to be trying those new things. Try Snapchats, try using those geo-filters, geotags, and just remain curious, just like Alice.
That's awesome. How about you, Sean?
I think that was brilliant. I think piggybacking on remain curious and John Maxwell saying more and more and more better. I think all we know is that it's going to be going faster. There's going to be new things. And so my biggest, probably what I personally try to do is try to remain moldable and always be learning. I mean, as I get older and I just think, I don't want to learn new thing. You know, can it just be how it used to be? You fall in love with your favorite, you fall in love with Snapchat, but who knows? And I think trying not to get romantic about all these changes, but developing a personality where we continue to learn, we continue to be like Alice, because things are going to get faster, and we need to adapt so we can continue to reach people in that process.
That's awesome. We'll jump to some of our questions here from you guys. If you guys have questions, go ahead and submit them via the app. First question is, what do we do about negative comments and or trolls? Do we just leave it alone? Do we delete it? How do you guys respond to it? What are your thoughts on negativity?
Negative people online? What? I don't know if you guys saw yesterday, but the Babylon Bee came out with an article about Saddleback Church making an amusement park to compete with Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm. And they're really those are funny satires if you know it's a satire. But really sadly, a lot of people don't know it's a satire and they don't investigate. And so we deal with a lot of negative comments, and that's the pastoral care part of our job. So Pastor Rick says hurt people hurt people. And so first we try to see if it's a hurt person making a comment, and if it's a ministry opportunity that we can respond to. We look at that first. And then secondly, you can see really easily if it's a hurt person or if it's a troll. And if it's a troll, we have a strict do not feed the trolls policy, because you can't reason with someone who didn't use reason to get there in the first place. You can't reason with crazy. And so we don't even try. We look at ourselves as shepherds of this online community. And as a shepherd, you need to protect your sheep. So if it's not helpful for your sheep to see, delete it, ban it, report it to Facebook, all of the above.
So how do you tell the difference between a troll and a hurt person?
It's really obvious. You can tell. Yeah.
No.
They got that long hair.
And you know what? If you have really great, if you have a community of great advocates, a lot of times they'll defend your church for you, and you don't have to.
Sure.
You had a thought on that, Jason?
I mean, I liked what Haley said. We I think with the pages we had with the Potter's House and Bishop Jakes, we didn't even, as soon as we saw anything that resembled that, we banned them, deleted them. So I appreciate hearing that, because we had such a large audience. We didn't have the manpower, the team to go through and see and take advantage of the ministry opportunities. I wish we would have, but with having just the millions, we just didn't. So we banned and deleted a lot of people, and that was our first initial strategy till we learned better.
No, that's good. One real quick question for Sean. So Sean goes, I respond to everything. Is it different for a church? Like, what if it becomes super negative?
So even deleting a comment would technically be a response, or banning a person would be a response too. And so I think that as leaders, we have to actually treat our social channels pastorally. And as Jesus said that we need to, shepherd the flock, I think there is a protective element that comes out to that you're the one who's going to curate the culture on your social media platforms. And so I think maybe not even just the hurt person thing, but if something is offensive, if rude, it's not something that is even decent as a human being, whether you're a believer or not. I mean, it's just instant delete and ban, because you are protecting your church and your channels. It's up to you to keep that environment there. But I do think that sometimes we go so extreme and we don't allow for maybe people to bring up criticisms or to bring things up. And one of the most powerful things, and it's true in products as well. Maybe somebody complains about a product on Amazon. One of the most powerful things a brand can do is respond and say, I hear you, see where you're coming from, actually, and really engage in conversation, because that's just as public as well. You're right. Maybe some of you and your own members will do that, but you don't want to be silent on those types of things. And it's actually an opportunity to say, well, actually, you're right, it could have been taken that way, but this is what it meant. Again, it's going to take time, effort. The same way church is messy and people are messy, the local church is, right? So social is going to be the same way, and you have to kind of get into the dirt and love people there, have compassion, have empathy, but then also really protect the flock and draw, I think, realistic boundaries and lines as well.
That's great. You wanted to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, I used to be all about the open internet, and everybody should have an opportunity to communicate. I wasted so much ministry time chasing those things down that I would say the more I've, and maybe I'm getting old, but I really don't let those conversations go much further. It's kind of a one strike. If you do it once, we'll respond. But if it becomes consistent in any way, we shut it down.
That's great. So a lot of people posting to like every platform. Should I be on every social media site? What are your thoughts on like being everywhere or not?
You want to go? Okay. I asked this question too in one of the sessions I was teaching before, and I asked what is the most important social media platform, and people say Facebook or Twitter, etc. But I asked them, look at what are the most people in your congregation, your online audience, what platform are they utilizing the most? Yep. Start from the pulpit and ask, and just, hey, in the congregation, what platform you guys like the best? Usually 9 times out of 10 is Facebook. Yeah. Okay, but I've seen some churches where it was Twitter before. But the platform I think you start with is the one that, the most people, your audience is on, and also the one that your staff knows how to use best. That's good. Okay, because you want to be effective. Because if everybody's on Facebook, but the volunteer you have really only understands Twitter, then that disconnect is going to just make that ministry ineffective, make that social media platform ineffective. Now, to the question of should you be posting on multiple platforms, well, people receive ministry differently. So there's different types of ministry to reach different types of people. So if I'm someone who only likes Instagram, I don't want to be ministered to on Facebook. So then you have to look at, if you're able to be effective on a lot of platforms, then you will reach more people. But it's worse to try and jump on Instagram just because that's the hot thing and you're ineffective on it.
That's good. So one of the questions was analytics. Which numbers should I be paying attention to? So like Twitter has analytics now, Facebook's insights. What are because there's so many of them. What are the most important ones when it comes to social media analytics are you guys paying attention to? 1 to 2 maybe. I'll love to hear from all of you guys.
I'll say there are four areas for our clients that we primarily focus on. One is impressions. How many people are we reaching? 2 is engagements. So how many people are liking, commenting, or sharing, and that's Twitter, Facebook, across the board. Number 3 is conversions, and we generally measure that around website traffic, so how much website traffic is coming from social media. And number 4 is our response time, so that's an internal measurement of how quickly are we responding to all comments and messages. So that's kind of our measures of success.
That's awesome. What are you looking at, Haley? You guys are looking at analytics.
I used to hate doing metrics so much. I'm a little dyslexic, so the numbers thing is not one of my favorites. But my boss really made me love it when he could show me like the value of what I'm doing. And so I think it depends on what you want to measure. There was no tool out there that was a one-size-fits-all for us. We want to measure advocacy, reach, and growth. And advocacy comes with engagement. So that number is really like how far is the reach of what we're doing, of what's posting. Impressions can be a little skewed sometimes, and so we don't like rest on that number, but reach, we really follow the reach number. And then some social platforms do measure engagement, and so that's really helpful to see how many likes, comments, and shares are you getting. And so that shows, are people engaging with what you're posting? And then growth, it's really important to measure growth. Yeah. It just is. And so I think you need to see like what story you want to tell through your metrics, because like Jason said, numbers don't lie, and a lot of pastors' opinions can sometimes trump that. But when you come hard with the numbers, you can't really debate that.
No, that's good. Interested to hear, what is like the big waste of time? Like what are some of the time sucks that you just do not, some of your mistakes maybe you made, like do not waste your time on you talked about the trolls or the negativity.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you can think of just a waste of time?
I would say I get lost in the numbers sometimes. So I'm the opposite of Haley. I love the numbers. I'll spend so much time measuring analytics, and I think that's very valuable. But for some of us, we can just really get too lost in the numbers and not focus on the ministry.
I think the one we had was the shiny thing, chasing the shiny things. Like as soon as something new came out, we tried to jump on it. So, and we were kind of like, what was the movie Up, where the dog is talking and he sees a squirrel? I mean, that was us. That was us. So we'd be like, we're doing very good on this social media platform, but we just heard that, this new one just came out, so we must jump on that. And then it's like squirrel, and then we're like, hey, this is no social media platform over here. And we were just jumping on everything just to say, hey, we're this large ministry and we're on everything. And we weren't as effective until we started looking at the analytics and realizing these top 4 or 5 platforms we're really good at. We don't need to be on 10. We're really good at these 4 or 5. And I even told some churches, just even if you're just good on 1 or 2, be effective, because it's about quality over the quantity.
That's good.
I have 2 things for this one. The first one would be trying to be a police for all of the other ministry pages out there with your church's name and branding on it. And so instead of going and policing them and finding who's running that account and reprimanding them, we found it better to educate and equip them with resources so that they can, if they're going to be on there, they can do it effectively and like in a nice way for our church. And then second, the biggest waste of time is just sustaining what you have and not looking for the more and more and more before.
So Snapchat, how do you see, Sean, and I'd love to hear if Pastor Rick's doing it, how would a pastor or church use Snapchat? We get some questions about Snapchat.
I would think that at this point, like especially based on the hands raised in the room and whatnot, that I would probably recommend a pastor use Instagram stories rather than Snapchat, just because you can have more of your audience there. I think that learning to storytell and use these platforms well is critical. I think probably the first step would be to just block some time on your calendar, 2 hours, to just Google how to use Instagram stories, to watch some of the greats doing it, and you would probably end up with a couple legal pad pages full of tips and ideas for how you could then adapt some of those tips to what you're going to do. I think at the end of the day, you want to be real, you want to be authentic, but then you also want to be able to figure out where your strength is. It's not everybody's strength necessarily. And so, but what's so incredible is that as a pastor or as a ministry leader, you have the opportunity to literally be in someone's day-to-day life, showing them how you live. And ultimately, Jesus, told us to make disciples, which is a way of life, a way of living. And so to give people that kind of behind-the-scenes look at your life, I think is so powerful. So I think that's really where the opportunity is, to learn to story-tell your day. And I would say, taking the lesson from Snapchat over to Instagram, I think one of the biggest mistakes I see all of us making on these platforms is that we're not actually telling a story. What does a story have? There's a reason it's called a Snapchat story, because it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But a lot of times, and we're just figuring this stuff out, but on Snapchat, we just post a picture of like a wall, and then a concert, and it's out of context. So thinking about an actual story, thinking about an actual reason, maybe a call to action, hey church, today, or, hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm taking my kids out, and thinking about how you could put together a story. It doesn't have to be long. 3 snaps would be a beginning, middle, and end. But just, actually thinking about the power of storytelling and then putting those on those platforms. And then just investing the time to practice. None of us were good at anything that we do the first time we did it.
Yep.
Right? And so we just have to accept that fact that we are going to be terrible the first time, and probably for the first few weeks and months.
Yeah.
But you just got to do it, and you do it more, and you learn as you go.
That's good.
One of my favorite Insta stories that we just did for the Super Bowl weekend was going around our office, because everyone knows church offices are like the quirkiest places. So just going around the office and finding people and getting them to show us their touchdown dance. And we actually just got the idea from watching the Justin Bieber commercial ahead of time.
Yeah.
And we're like, show us your unlimited moves. And so we just went around and played music and took a football and had our staff just dance. And then for Veterans Day, we went and asked staff if they had family that were veterans to print out a picture and just to wish them a happy Veterans Day. And we had people messaging us crying. They were so moved by just seeing that our staff is connected to veterans in their own families, and sharing that on our stories. So I wish stories lasted more than 24 hours, but I would like to have kept that one.
That's awesome.
I mean, you can save them, but it's too long.
I think we get very focused organizationally, and I think it's important to look at how do we as a church manage social media organizationally, but I think it's used best personally. And so I see pastors that are just being people on Snapchat
Tweet
and on
that.
Instagram stories
That's
and
tweetable.
really using it. So Carl Lentz is my pastor at Hillsong, New York, and he barely talks about his faith on there, but when he does, it's so powerful because he's just living his life on there, and he's just such a normal person. You know, I have fun getting to know his family. Does that make sense? And what he does on a day-to-day basis. And then when he kind of just pulls in those ministry moments is powerful. And so I think as we're people on social media, that's where we're most effective.
That's awesome. So do me a favor. This is the last piece of advice, just encouraging words you give. So your your Twitter username so we can follow you. And then any last-minute encouragements?
Let's start with Nils.
So on Twitter, at Nils Smith. And probably the last thing I want to reiterate something Haley said earlier is social media is about ministry first, marketing second. And when we have that mindset, that's where we're most effective.
That's awesome.
Social media, wow, I can't even think of what I was going to say, is at Jason Caston on Twitter, Instagram, all them platforms. And the one key thing I want you all to take away from here is, you heard a whole bunch of stuff, but you don't have to do everything you heard here today, but please do something.
That's good.
My social is also just at Haley Veturis on all platforms. And actually, my two sisters are back here in the back room. They also do social media, the three of us. And I'll just quote my youngest sister, Chelsea. She says, "Tweet others the way you want to be tweeted."
That's good. How about you, Sean?
I'm at Sean Cannel on all the platforms. And I think my biggest thing would just actually be to relax and have fun. I think that sometimes we overthink it too much and perfectionism holds us back. And so to just get on there and experiment and it's okay to make mistakes. And remember that this is the Super Bowl dance in the office. There's so many opportunities on social to do that kind of stuff. So relax, have fun, experiment, and stay curious.
Awesome. Well, I'm Alejandro Reyes. Want to do me a favor and give it a hand for these guys.